Okay. Hello, everyone. Good day and welcome to WIF Academy. We understand that exams can be a super stressful time of the year, especially now with most of term one haven't been online this academic year. We've curated this event at Warwick India Forum to make sure we can help you guys as much as possible. Please do be aware that this call is being recorded. Sneha and I are going to be your hosts for this session. So sit back, relax, and watch your worries about exams fade away for the most part. We'll be introducing ourselves as a team now. My name is Krish. I'm a first year econ student. And Sneh, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Sneh Mathur, and like my co-head, I'm also a first-year economics student.
Today we're here to, okay. Cods, could you please introduce yourselves as well?
Hi guys, thank you Careers team. Hello everyone. Thank you all for being here. Very warm welcome from the WIF coordinator team to all the student members to our very first event of the year WIF Academy 2022-23. My name is Mikhail Memon and I'm the deputy coordinator at Warwick India Forum. As exam sessions is just a stone throw away, we at WIF are aware how stressful this period can be. To ease this period, we decided to bring back our much needed and helpful careers team event, the WIF Academy. I would just like to say a big thank you to all those who've taken time out of their hectic schedules to be here today. Our executive team has spent countless weeks working on this event just so that our beloved audience can have the opportunity to hear from our experienced seniors who've been there and done that. I'm sure the audience is eagerly waiting to hear from our panel of stellar students and graduates who we very warmly welcome back to our university and at WIF. Let us now move on to the proceedings of this event, which will be led by our very own careers team. We would like to proudly introduce to our careers team 2022-23, Sneh Mathur and Krish Dhruv as our team heads, Harini Desai as our team member, and Arzu Bariana as our careers advisor. On to the careers team.
Thank you, Mikhail. Today, we're here to cater to one of the most central parts of your university experience, academics and careers. This year, not only are we going to be helping you network with firms, we're also bringing you exclusive tips from our alumni network as we are going to today. WIF Careers will be providing you special advice with a South Asian international perspective in a series of workshops, speaker panels, resources, and other events throughout next year as well. We're always a text away. Feel free to contact us, me, Sneh, or the team regarding any doubts or any event ideas you guys might have and what you'd like to see this and next year. WIF Academy is the first careers team event for the year. Today we'll be having course-specific exam prep sessions for law, management, accounting and finance, economics, and interdisciplinary courses like ePace, with third years and graduates that have graduated and, as Mikhail said, been there, done that. We've invited them to share their experiences with exams and their overall experience with the course as well. The flow of events today is going to be a panel introduction where I introduce Saisha and Anvesha. It's going to be moving on to their experience with examinations, their resources and tips, followed by questions from the careers team that we have drafted ourselves. And lastly, a live Q&A where the audience can engage with our speakers.
Today we have Saisha Jaggi and Anvesha Dey with us, who are going to be providing you with tips and tricks to ace your law exams this season. I would now like to hand it back over to Krish to introduce our panelists for today.
All right, Saisha Jaggi, is a third-year law student. She was part of the publications team at the Warwick India Forum. She's also been an active part of Enactus Warwick, which is a consulting related society, Warwick Law Summit, and been the brand ambassador for Watson's Daily. Her interests, again, include reading, creative writing, photography, watching old films, diving, and is one who constantly learns and unlearns. Next up, we have Anvesha Dey, who is a graduate at Warwick. She was also part of the Warwick, who was a graduate at Warwick, currently in Mumbai. She was part of the Warwick India Forum and Warwick Indian Society. She's an avid movie buff, travel enthusiast, and self-appointed food connoisseur. her career goal is to become a solicitor with a particular interest in litigation.
So moving on from introductions, we now have a set of curated questions, which will allow our panelists to give some more insights into writing exams. Could you please tell us about your own experiences with exams and any advice you may have for us?
So can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay. So I didn't have to take exams in my first year, and in my second year, because of COVID, everything was organically very online, and it was very new for not just the students, but also the professors. But I think we're much better equipped to handle online examinations this year. The platform is the same, the time is the same, the way you'll go about the examinations is the same. So I think we're in much better position to be on this side of the screen and give advice this year than I would have been last year, because it was just, you were very oblivious to the whole thing. So with the 24-hour schedule and with the way those 24 hours will unravel, the way you prepare for your exams also changes, because you don't really have to learn everything the same way. You don't really have to make your notes the same way. So I think all in all, it's just much more seamless and easier in a way if you just have a strategy beforehand.
So I've seen it all. I've given an in-person exam, which I think to go back to now would be hell. I don't know how law students particularly did those essays in 3 hours. They're kind of unmanageable. But as Saisha said, I think it all comes down to strategy. Like those 24 hours can be really a boon. And I don't think you need to utilize all 24 hours. But at the same time, like, don't just try to finish it in 3 hours as well. Like you have the time, make use of it. Again, the way, you use your notes is kind of key. So maybe you don't have to learn everything, but maybe like have a condensed down version of what you want to bring to the exam. Like if you struggle with cases, you know where you need to concentrate, like what you want to look back on during the exam. Having maybe like going through past exam papers and having like essay plans based on what you've seen kind of helps. And yeah, I guess we'll move on to those specific bits like with the questions ahead. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you guys for this. I guess my next question would be connected to the last one, but in a more sort of broad sense. Could you please give us an overview of the sort of resources and tips that you used during your time at university? Can be anything from like a website or something you found useful in exams, or your favorite study spot that nobody knew about. Saisha, of course, you can't say that still for a while.
So the resources,
I thought,
will I start with the first two, or how do you wanna like Warwick Library and lecture, or do you want to start with readings and past papers?
Either's fine.
you can take the lead.
So the library is honestly, I think, a very, very helpful resource, because everything, all the reading that you need, you can access it through the library. And also Westlaw has like a repository of all the cases. So accessing the judgments, precedents, everything becomes really easy with that one resource. You don't really have to go through all the judgments because they're really long to read. So I'd suggest just going to the websites through the library. Like JSTOR is a really good source for essays, because it gives you what you need, like in terms of scholars, and what you need in terms of various opinions from different jurisdictions, like your European law, international law, all of that. So I think accessing all those resources from the library is really helpful. And lecture notes, for me, honestly, this is primarily, I think, all you need to use for these online exams, because if you have watched all your lectures and you made your notes and you know where everything is, like Anvesha said, a condensed version, you can just use that in those 24 hours and it'll be really easy for you to translate that into an essay or a problem question.
Yeah, again, bouncing back from that, like I think just if you have like your PowerPoint slides, which are usually uploaded on Moodle, you can like that's a great place to begin, or like just to, reflect back on when you're kind of lost. But I think externally, like especially in my first year, what helped me a lot was these Law Express books that you get. Like it has a condensed down version of literally the entire textbook. And so if you've not read the entire textbook, that's like a really good place to look at, because I think things are made easier as well. And then they have a book where they have like essays done for you as well. So, I mean, if you're struggling really last minute, that's a good place to start, I guess. But don't solely rely on that. And I'd say like look through any resources you can find from the lecturer. But yeah, study spot, if you're in Leamington, then go to the study grid in Leamington early in the morning or late at night. It's also like it starts at 10 p.m. But like, yeah, it is a good place if you're in Lem and looking for a change. As for past papers, I would say like they've been my key point of strategy. Like I've relied heavily on, kind of looking back at what's been given and then kind of interpreting what would come this year. And you kind of get a pattern, you kind of understand like what you would get as a problem question, what you would get as an essay question. So, and even in an essay question, you kind of see these recurring topics coming up again and again. So I guess it helps you prepare. And sometimes you can kind of go back and see the answer booklet for the previous years. So if you read that very well, like it kind of helped me a lot of times during the 24-hour bracket. Like I would just go and see if a similar essay question came up, and then I'd go and see the answer paper from the previous years, and I'd kind of like try and fit all that into my answer, because that kind of tells you what they were looking for. So at least it tells you somewhat of the important cases as well. So it really helps that way.
Thank you for sharing. I'm sure this is of great help to all of us. They've stopped, at least for econ, they don't give any answers anymore. You just have to, discuss it in a feedback hours. So we can't do the same. All right, we've collected a few questions we'd love for you to answer. Yeah, we'll just start from here, if that's okay. The first one is, what would be your advice for those students who have not covered all of their content for their respective subjects at this point of time?
I would say study smart instead of hard. Like I've been in that position a few times, and it's actually kind of paid off, like not learning everything and knowing, like, again, relying on past papers, seeing what comes, and then kind of narrowing it down specifically on that. Like it is a gamble, but then since you have 24 hours, you can kind of afford to do, like, look over those things and those topics that are going to come for sure, and then look back and then write it well. Like I'd say, yeah, maybe it will take more time in going back and reading the textbook or reading the cases, but like understand what is more likely to come and then prepare in that sense. And like don't go, if the lecture is going to be of no help, then don't spend time going to the lecture. Like you'll probably figure out if that topic's going to come as a essay question, then look at it from an essay question perspective, and probably like maybe just like type in a generic like Google search about that topic and see what comes up, and maybe have like a few links open so that that like, okay, and like maybe have a brief glance through those articles as well, so that you can like kind of refer that back when you're writing your answer.
Yeah, just to second Anvesha completely on that, I don't think you need to know everything, every topic with the same amount of depth, because at least from the modules I've done, like for example in trust law, you're told that you get 4 essay questions, 4 problem questions, and you can do all essay questions or all problem questions. So you have the ability, you have the option to kind of go with what you're comfortable with. Same with a module, a 15 CAT module like medicine, where you're told that, at least last year we were told how many topics will be asked from which category we study. Like they told us there'll be something for organ donation, there'll be something for euthanasia, there'll be something for abortion. And these are topics that I really enjoyed studying, and those are the questions that came. So I'd say reach out to your professors because during their office hours, because they're really, easy to talk to, especially because everything's online. And if there is any such loophole where, there is a tendency to ask one sort of question more, they will convey it to you, and you can just focus studying on that and use the Law Express or the Concentrate books, which concise everything, to just get a really solid foundation for those topics. Yeah.
Thank you guys for the answers. My next question to both of you would be, how much time would you say roughly a student should spend revising, over, I guess, both like term 1 and term 2, and maybe even into term 3? And how was it for you? How did you spend your time?
I think it's really subjective on from person to person. I think you need to know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, like what you're prepared for and what you intend to do in the paper. So if you know your strengths are problem questions, then probably like spend time on doing those bits which are going to cover your foundational, like you need to establish particular, it's kind of like math. If you look at it, you have to establish those steps and the logic to it. So like look at focusing on that rather than, focusing on those parts of this chapter which are more catered towards essay questions. But like I'd say, yeah, and look at your timetable and divide your time accordingly. If you know your timetable is like, you have 2 back-to-back papers, like probably prepare for the second one beforehand so that you're not kind of rushing and leaving it all to the last minute. But yeah, that's all I have to say about this.
So I think it really depends. So I think through the course of the term, this depends on how you've chosen your modules a lot. So for me, because I'm someone who personally prefers writing an essay over taking an exam, I chose primarily all essay modules so that I don't have to take that many exams. And organically, I allotted much more time to those essays because they're 100% of my grade at the time. And that left me with very little time to revise what was really happening with each module, but then I covered up for that during the break. So I think it really depends on what modules you have, when they're getting tested, and all of that. And then I think once you get your exam schedule, just write it all down and how many days you have left before each exam and where you stand with each module. And you ideally want to give yourself a couple of days to go over your notes, revise, and then you can just divide it up according to how your schedule is looking like for you.
Yeah, and I'd say one more thing is that like if you've left it to the last minute, like that's okay because it's uni, a lot of people do that. But I say if you're doing something, like do it properly, don't like rush and try and do everything haphazardly, because more likely than not, like some of the topics that you do will come. So like do it in such a way that like whatever it comes, you can do it like and give it your 100% rather than, doing this and then skipping some bits and then being left with like a weird choice where you're like, oh yeah, I know kind of like half of that question, but I'm not really that great with this either. So like if you're being selective in your studying, then just make sure that's like 100% well done.
Thank you for your responses. Now, obviously with exams comes a lot of nervousness, a lot of stress, especially for students who are in their first year. This is the first time that we'd be writing exams in university. So my next question to you would be, how did you deal with stress while preparing for your exams?
Quite honestly, it was taking a break. Like it's basically like I knew what time my friends would also be taking a break, and we kind of made it a point like during, especially my first year, we had like dinner every day together, like irrespective of what it was. We would like, it was IPL season, so we would match our dinners with like somewhat of the IPL time, and we just watch, catch up, and like eat dinner, cook together. And honestly, like it's really helpful to just like have that kind of escape, especially when you're on campus. Like it doesn't take more than like 5-10 minutes to go to someone's house and just relax, but it's good to take that break. Or even if like it's gym that you like or taking a walk, like go do those things because you need to recharge. And like being in your room in that kind of weather when like, the sun's out at 4 and like it's setting again at 4, like it can get depressing. So like just go out and like not so much that it's not in moderation, but like take your breaks. And I guess, yeah, like whatever it is, even if it's like binge eating, like Ben and Jerry's, like do those things and like just get through with it, and you'll see the consequences like later on. It's fine. Like don't take it all over your head.
I think for everyone in their first year, I don't know how much you're thinking this, but so there are some courses where your first year grades do count, like probably 10 or 20%, but for law, they don't. It's equally divided between your second and your third year. So if you're in your first year, I think it's a really good way to look at the exams as just an opportunity to see how well you study, how well you perform under the pressure of exams, and what they're asking for you. Because it is a jump from high school to college, because they expect different things. They expect you to write different things. I didn't even know how to cite in Oscola for a really long time. Like that was my biggest fear. And during my first year, I kind of tackled all of that. I figured out how to write an essay, how to cite an essay, how to critically evaluate, and all of those things, which were just Greek to me before. Even though I did IB, they expect such different things. So that, and if you're in your second and your third year, you don't have that privilege really. So I'd say even during those 24 hours, you don't have to lock yourself up in a room, because doing so will just make you look at your answers and reread your answers in a very arbitrary way. I remember during my ConAd exam last year, I kind of reached like a writer's block point. So I went for a walk with my flatmate for like an hour-long walk. I came back and I actually realized that I'm reading it again from a fresh perspective. I realized what I'm not doing well. And honestly, you have all day. You don't really need to lock yourself up and just reread the same thing again. I think taking a break is productive instead of the contrary. So yeah.
I think that's really good to hear. And just kind of following on from that question, how did you balance your time between extracurriculars, such as say going to the gym or society work? So how would you balance your time between those and academics?
I mean, do you mean this in the non-exam context? Because like during exam season, everyone's usually focusing just on exams, right? I mean, yeah.
For example, say if you're like on a sports team, I know a lot of my friends who play football, for example, they still have trials and they have practices still going on. So what advice would you give to somebody to kind of balance their time between both of those?
I think it's honestly just comes down to a little bit of organization. If you know, like for example, even during exam season, like if your exams are spread out and you know that your flatmates are going for dinner the next day and you want to go, like just prepare better for it, like from the day before, or like I'd say get up early and like kind of manage to do, like set out a certain chunk for yourself and like set yourself tasks to do beforehand, and like have a kind of like rough sketch of a timeline in your head that you want to achieve. And then, you can kind of fit in everything you want between that timeline. Like it doesn't have to be that you do only one thing and, miss out on the others. You can have like a mix of everything, as long as you kind of schedule it or organize your life in that way.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really just time management, because usually the societies that we're part of are societies for things that we enjoy doing. So I don't really look at it like work, even though sometimes the requirements are a little mundane, like, a tryout or writing something or editing something, and it's not really enjoyable in that sense. But yeah, I think eventually you balancing between work and these other things is just, I think it comes with university, like the package of university. So I think just managing your time and maybe figuring out what the next day is going to look like, writing it all down. For me, writing things just really helps. And, waking up accordingly, going to bed accordingly, it makes all the difference. just having that control over your day, really.
All right, thank you for that. Again, our next question, moving on, is personally and overall, in your experience, would you say group study is better or individual study? And if you think the answer varies, then which context would group study or individual study suit people more for your course?
I think it depends from, like, even in your course, I think it depends from paper to paper, right? Like, if you have someone who's taking the same paper with you, sometimes it can like be really helpful to like not study all the time together, but like kind of reconvene after like setting a task between yourselves, and then like probably coming back and discussing what do you think is going to come, and like throwing out ideas together, and like knowing where both of you stand. Because then, you know, like in my first year, like in my taught paper, I studied with my best friend, and we kept on like throwing cases at each other, and it kind of helped me prepare for the cases, because it's such a case-based module. Like, it helped me know where I stand and what I need to go back and learn on. But yeah, like sometimes even if you're not like studying the same course as someone, it can just help to be in the same room. And if you're a person who gets distracted easily, or like finding it hard, or like just going through a mind block, sometimes it just helps to have like someone in a supervisory mode trying to study as well next to you. Like, it can help if you're stuck. So it depends again on what is your cup of tea.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you prefer individually, and also I think where you stand with your exam preparation. Because personally, I think I really benefit, just like what Anvesha said, from, you know, talking to someone, just going back and forth on where you're at, quizzing each other. You know, it's just not that, it just makes it easier, it makes it more fun. But if I'm 2 days before my exam and I absolutely don't know where I'm at, and I just have so much to learn and so much to figure out, I probably wouldn't be able to study with someone else. I just would want to be in a room figuring it out till I'm in a more stable space, I guess. So it's a very personal decision, I think.
Okay. Thank you for that. Moving on to more sort of specific questions. Do you guys think, so according to sort of your experience, how important are first year grades to sort of summer internships, especially in law?
I think it is like important. I won't completely disregard it. Like, even though a lot of courses say that the first year doesn't really matter, while you're applying for internships, it's really the only grade you have in hand, especially to prove like what you've done in university. And like, as many extracurriculars as you may do, like, it is something that they pay a lot of attention to. And like a first and a 2-1 is really what kind of distinguishes you with someone who's kind of like run of the mill. Like, a lot of law students end up doing the same kind of extracurriculars as well. So I wouldn't say disregard it, but like bear in mind that it will be looked at. So yeah.
I definitely agree. I think even not just because like they don't claim right on hand that, okay, this is exactly what we'll be basing your application on. No one says that. But just if you have a really good understanding of what you've studied and you have a good grade, you can like plug it in, like during an interview. Like just I like, for example, I applied for an internship in intellectual property, and you know, I just spoke about my module, global IP, and just about if I got a good grade there. And that is just something you can just plug in if you want them to kind of connect some dots, because they do glance at it definitely. And it is something that'll make a difference, because ultimately, I feel like law firms are academically focused, and honestly, any commercial firm that you look at. So it does make a difference.
Cool. For any of you that have done an in-person exam, could you please walk us through one and your one sort of in-person exam experience at Warwick? Because they seem really ancient to me at this point.
I guess I'm the only one for this question then. It's actually interesting to give in-person. I mean, it's pretty much like how you give a board exam. You come in early, You have to wait for a bit before you get into the hall. Everyone's kind of stressing outside and discussing everything. Then you go into the hall and like there's dead silence. You have to kind of have like a transparent pouch and bottle. And like you can take your phones in, but you have to put them in a transparent pouch below your seat. And like, again, just the way Indian schools work, you're not really allowed to mark anything on the papers, although like sometimes you can get away with it. I got away with it on one paper, but in the other paper, they took my paper away and then gave me a fresh one. But yeah, you again have like a set reading time of like 15 minutes, and then your paper starts and they give you that answer booklet and you write, and then you raise your hand if you need a supplement book, and that's pretty much it. And then yeah, after 3 hours, like you stop and they almost like immediately like just run to take your papers out of your hands.
Wow.
But yeah.
Cool. Okay. Sneh, the next question.
Yeah, so one question which we did have is that often there can be, you can fall ill quite near the exam or just some emergency happens. So in that case, how would you use mitigating circumstances?
So this actually like I did use mitigating circumstances in like peak COVID time. But basically I'd say the first point of contact would be a personal tutor, like just let them know to keep them in the loop, because I think they get a notification for that. But bear in mind that mitigating circumstances isn't going to like change your grades. So like if you haven't prepared for the paper and you think that mitigating circumstances is going to help you, it's probably not, because they only look at it while they're awarding your final degree. So like you won't really see the mitigating circumstance affecting your mark the year you get marked. It's only going to be towards the end of your degree. So just be careful with like what you say and how you say it, because sometimes they can also ask you for like proof. If you say that you've fallen sick, like it's happened that they ask you for like a doctor's paper or something like that. So just like make sure whatever you're saying is kind of like holds legitimate grounds.
I've never applied for mitigating for an exam. I've done it for an essay, and that was because I was for a legitimate like reason for like health, and I had a certificate to show for it. It turned out to be quite seamless, the whole process. But yeah, my first point of contact, as Alesha said, was my personal tutor, because once they're in the loop, you're not entirely responsible. Like the responsibility is a little off your shoulders because you've connected with someone. So it's also, you and your personal tutor together to have to inform the right people and everything. So that's really helpful. However, for an exam, like in those 24 hours, if it's something regarding internet or light, the light went off, or because I didn't know how AEP works and I uploaded the wrong essay, I'd suggest steer away from all of these situations, because I've had friends who have literally used these and it legitimately happened with them. It wasn't an excuse. I've known someone who uploaded something, but it didn't go through till after time passed because the internet didn't work. And I've had someone who uploaded the wrong thing and then uploaded the right thing after, again, the deadline passed. And they've been pretty ruthless in all these cases. They've straight up marked them a 0 because they've, not uploaded something on time. And it's because the AEP forum or whatever, like that thing, it very clearly states that you're responsible for what you upload and when you upload it, and they say that you should upload your thing much prior to the deadline. So I would say steer clear from mitigating circumstances in those situations, because I don't think they'd really get you very far.
Yeah, and again, like just to like add on to that point, like it is a very important point to note is that like just you have, especially in a law paper, you have 24 hours, you have the time. Just make sure that like once you've submitted your answer script, just like download it again, because you can see your submission. Just download it again and check that is the right paper with like whatever the requirements are. Just like check it again, because it's happened to my friends where like they've uploaded like even a blank document, or like sometimes they upload the right document but it comes out blank and they've been marked 0. And like even and this has happened in the final year that they've been awarded a 0, and because of which like their grades have fallen down miserably, and then they've had to wait for a significant amount of time for their degree to be like corrected. So just make sure you're uploading the right answer script and that everything's in place. And if you're having problems with the platform, just like kind of contact, you have those point of contact, just keep them somewhere safe on your phone, so that that point where you're panicking, you know who to contact.
Thank you so much for that. My next question would be, would you have any schedule making or time management tips, given that there are about 2 weeks left for exams to start across the university?
I think just like know your timetable well, know where you stand with what subject, like what your positioning is. And again, like get on your strategy, like figure out what you want to do in the paper. It's really all about figuring out where you are as an individual and then kind of playing to your strengths and weaknesses.
I agree. So I think if you have, let's say, your third exam has a 10-day break before, it won't really make sense to revise for that because you'll have a sufficient amount of time to do that. And it depends on where you are with each, with each module. And because, as you said, there's 2 weeks, I'd reckon most people would be preparing for their first exam by now. So I'd suggest that a good place to be for that first exam would be catching up on the content, catching up on the lectures, just figuring out what your strengths are, going over the past papers, because as Anvesha said, and I spoke to my professor about this, most exams follow a very set pattern, especially in what topic gets asked as a problem question and what topic gets asked as an essay question. So once you decipher that, and once you figure out what your strengths are, it makes it much easier to prepare. And for, let's say you're someone who's much better equipped to deal with problem questions and just practicing the whole issue, rule, application, conclusion, like the way you have to answer it. Once you know what topics it's for, I think it just makes it really easy. So yeah, just working smart, really.
All right. Thank you for that. The last question, sort of, not the last question, but sorry, just give me, yeah. How would you, okay, I'll put out a statement and I want your opinion on what you think about that. How would you go about, again, studying smarter than rather than harder? And sort of which modules would you apply that to in your own experience?
Like I 100% preach this. Like to be honest, I haven't been like a bookworm ever in my life. So like everything's been kind of left mostly to the last minute. Like I work best under pressure, but like as long as you figure out where you stand and like where you need to focus on, like just know that. And like it's an open book exam, you have 24 hours, like it's really on in your favor. It's just how you exploit that. Like you need to know how to exploit that. Like don't be dumb and go and like copy everything off the lecture slides and like just make it seem like you've just not put effort into it. Like be smart that way. Like I had a module which I was frankly like not really prepared for, and I did like I think best in law school ever by just like going back and listening to the lectures and like paraphrasing and then reading from the textbook and filling in the lines. And like it did require some work, but like it helped me. Like I suggest that to someone else? Probably not, but like you have that opportunity to kind of exploit those resources. So like just be smart about how you do it.
I agree. So I think it's really about, again, those 24 hours are a boom. So, even if in those 24 hours you are stuck on a question, you can refer back to the lecture slides. You have so many books. You have all the databases for the judgments. You have there's really so much you can refer to in those 24 hours. And although it's not a good idea to rely on those 24 hours to really be making those notes and going over different links, it is an option. So if you're in that situation during an exam, I don't think you need to stress. And again, like I said, just figuring out, because some modules have a really set pattern about how many questions they'll ask from each term or from each topic or what each topic is for. So I think once you crack that and figure it out and play it to your strengths, you don't have to go over everything taught. You can just selectively study as long as you do it in a smart way.
And I think especially with like online exams, like if you're edging on that side where you're not really sure about a particular topic, but you want to attempt that in the paper, like know where to look, like be prepared for a situation where you're not like frantically looking everywhere and then getting nowhere. Like make it easier for yourself in those 24 hours. Like try and condense down your notes, try and condense down which lecture slides to look at, like I remember some of the lecturers had like 3-4 videos for like 1 week's lecture for like one topic, but like what the essay questions asking is probably not going to be in all 4 of those videos. So like know which one is what and where you need to look at. And again, like really answer the question. Don't like go around, beat around the bush and talk about other things. And because you know that better than what's being asked in the question, because you're going to be marked down for something like that.
Perfect. Thank you. The next question is, what type of referencing should be used in an exam environment? And yeah, just any tips you might have on referencing.
So from what I know, you don't have to cite everything in the proper Oscula format because, well, obviously that's really time consuming. And although the professors know that you've referred to like a bunch of sources and a bunch of lectures and a bunch of books, they don't really expect you to cite all of that. So the way they're going to be grading your answers is going to be not very different from how they'd probably grade an exam taken in person. They won't be extra harsh just because they know that you've had the 24 hours and they know that you've had all these resources. So the way they grade your papers is pretty much the same. So you don't really have to cite, just like you don't have to cite in a real exam. But obviously, to avoid plagiarism, just providing the link, the hyperlink for the source and the name of the author from like a certain article you've read or a case or a judgment, just like the basics, you don't have to go all with the date access and all of that. It's just all the basic information, and that should be good. Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else was told this, but I was told in one particular paper that even if it's like the lecturer you're referring to, like a lecture slide, you should, like, good practice would be to reference that back as well, like just as professor name, I guess, comma, year, like APA format. But like, I don't know, it kind of depends on how much of it you use, but like, yeah, just make sure you kind of footnote or like APA, whatever you're doing.
Thank you. Now moving on to some course specific questions. What books or resources did you find were the most relevant in preparing for your examinations?
I think lecture slides, lecture notes are going to be everyone's Bible when it comes to it. If your lecturer is providing you that, like, that's definitely like what you should rely on very heavily. But other than that, like, look back at readings. If you've done them, then well and good. Like, try, or in the 24 hours, like, just kind of skim through a reading that might be helpful and try and take out some lines from there. Otherwise, Law Express is a great place for like a condensed version of the entire topic that you have.
Yeah, so like I said, I heavily relied on lecture slides because that's where the foundational information for every module is. So that's a great place to start. Again, if you are a little unsure about the intricacies of the topic, then looking at Law Express and Oxford's Concentrate. They really concise everything into like a few pages for each topic. So just skimming through that can definitely help you strengthen your foundation for that module. And I personally don't really read the additional readings because I've just never done that because you have no time with so many essays during the term. But when I know a question has come from a certain topic, I refer to the further readings for that topic. I did that in those 24 hours because you really have 24 hours for 2, 3, maybe 4 questions in a 30 CAT module. And you have the time to refer to a reading, skim through it, cite it, and show that maybe you read it back then. So you have that privilege, and I'd recommend doing that and citing it because it does show that you read the further reading when you were required to, and you kind of, critically evaluated it in your essay, which looks quite good.
Yeah. And like, again, if you, for example, like in medicine and the law, like, abortion or like organ transplantation would come as a essay question, like just look up, maybe it doesn't even have to be the additional readings that are being given, just maybe look up something on Google, find a good article and find a way to kind of link it back to your essay. And it kind of just helps in adding that because it shows that in that 24 hours, like you have really made use of that time by going in the extra step. It doesn't have to be like 5 lines and like a really detailed research, but just maybe something which is more than what's been given to you.
All right. My next question to you would be, what's your strategy for essay-based questions? Sort of, how would you optimally tackle time to answer 24-hour based essay questions in law?
For me, essays weren't my strength. So honestly, like in the 24 hours, I plan to like get the essays like in the middle or maybe right at the start. So I'd start off with the essay, get that over with, finish like a chunk of my time with that, and then move on to problem questions, which I knew would be less time consuming. Or I'd kind of like do one problem question, then an essay question because that takes time. But then I would kind of have an essay plan already in my hand. Like I would probably like make notes somewhere on my laptop and know what to look back on, like just pointers of if this topic comes, then okay, this is what I need to talk about, this is what I need to talk about. And yeah, that kind of helps. And obviously, like I think if you have the answer scripts from like last year, keep them open and know like which year had which answers in the essays. Like it really helps.
So I think with the law essay, for me, what's really helped, and this is because I've fallen back on this earlier, is firstly just reading the question a couple of times and figuring out what it's asking of you. So the hints are always in the question, the keywords, if it's a to what extent question, if it's a contrast, compare question, like those questions all require very different things. So figuring out what the question requires of you and then consequently making a plan for it. The thing with the law essay again is it doesn't need to have like too much sugar coating, like very direct introduction, thesis statement, what you're going to do, your critical evaluation, a conclusion. It does not have to be very, very extensive, and the language does not have to be very sugar coated, which again makes it quite easy to do in those 24 hours. And like Advesha said, something really helped me for medicine was going over the previous year's answer script, because the question that was asked was exactly the same, just worded a little differently. So when I looked at the previous year's answer script and what they required from that question, they literally listed out all the points, what they require you to answer, and they framed it differently this year. So I just went through it like a checklist, making sure I've answered everything that they'd asked, and that worked out well.
Cool. So the final question from our end would be that how would you allocate time while attempting multiple essay-based questions?
I think it really depends again on what you think you're better prepared for. Like if there's a question, like whether that's a problem question or a essay question that you think is like I'm 100% sure of this answer. Like I know it like from the back of my head. Like I know exactly which question paper it's been in before, and I can probably refer back to that paper. If you know and you're really confident about a particular answer, like maybe start off with that, because it kind of just helps you boost your ego, right? Like, and it helps you in that initial 24 hours to like get that out of the way and then allocate the rest of the time to the rest of your papers. So like play to your strengths, and if not, like if you know something's going to be really time consuming, you might as well start off with that and then kind of leave the rest of the time and then divide it accordingly. But again, I'd say like have a brief like time frame in mind. Like set yourself a goal that I probably don't want to spend more than these many hours on this answer, and like fit in your meals. Like a lot of people like skip meals, and there's no need to do that. Like 24 hours is enough time. Like it's not going to come down to a point where you have to skip meals. So just like take care of yourself, like know where you stand and like strategize once you see the paper. It's a really personal thing, but like make sure you're, you know, keeping calm. Like when you stress out, like sometimes it's just that you probably skip something that you didn't think you'd skip. So, and just leave, I'd say like make sure before you're submitting your paper, just read. Like it's something really simple, but like I guess in 24 hours you get like fed up. So just make sure you read your answers, make sure the grammar and everything is okay. Grammarly is something that helped me because I used to get really lazy checking my grammar. So I just used to like copy paste my answer, put it on Grammarly, and then just check if everything's fine. And then just check everything and go through with it. It's fine.
All right. Okay, go on, Saisha.
So yeah, pretty much just echoing what Anvesha said. It's just, I think you can start by making a very brief essay plan about whatever essays you want to answer, just like maybe a web diagram, or just figuring out, okay, this is from this week and everything, and just start with what you're comfortable with. And if you have a draft ready or you're midway and you're just not going anywhere, you can always shuttle back and forth between two essays as well. So it really just depends on what you're comfortable with, where you stand. And 24 hours is plenty. So I don't think time management is really going to be an issue for 2 or even 3 essays. You wouldn't need to stay up all night. I don't think you need to skip meals at all. It's actually really long. Like time passes quite slow. So it's not so bad.
All right. Thank you a lot for answering our questions, Anvesha and Saisha. I can't thank Grammarly Premium enough, honestly. The advice was extremely helpful. We would like to now sort of open the stage to our audience for Q&A session. I request that everyone who has questions, please send them using the chat feature, and we'll turn on your microphone, or turn on your microphone when called out directly, and you'll be able to ask the questions.
Okay, so since I've been unmuted, I think
Yep.
I asked the first question. Yeah, so I just wanted to know if there's like an outline or a framework you guys follow for essay questions, and how much you allocate and how you prioritize certain arguments. Because the problem that I have mostly when writing essay questions is that I consider everything to be very important, and obviously that makes word limits a huge problem for me. So I guess this is really subjective, but what's a rough idea you follow for prioritizing content within essays? If there's a framework you follow or a certain outline, then it'd be great if you shed some light on that.
Okay, so I guess like initially, I don't know if you know about the Harvard pattern, but we were told like you start off with the introduction, which is like briefly summarizing the question and what your essay is going to exactly talk about, breaking that down, and then probably introducing the main argument in the next paragraph. Then in the body, you have like narrow it down like very concisely, like in different paragraphs, like have your arguments very clearly broken down, and then like conclude it. But make sure like if you do bring up an argument, like you close it properly as well, so it's backed with cases and it's substantiated with what point you're trying to make. Like don't leave it open-ended. Like the way I would see it is like write your essay, and then once you're done with it, just think about it as the examiner would see it. So like I guess like at the end of every paragraph, just ask a question, okay, what point is this paragraph trying to make? And does it connect back to what's being asked? And in law essay questions, a lot of times you get a statement or like a long paragraph that, oh, this case was a landmark case, it did this. But like, that's not really what the essay wants you to focus about. Maybe like it'll literally end with, okay, analyze the development of case law. So just know exactly what it's asking you, so talk about the development, but maybe if that's the statement is saying, okay, this case was the landmark case, then probably just like in the end, focus a bit more on that case. So yeah, just read the question a few times and try to get the hang of it.
Cool. Thank you for that, Anvesha. Mikhail, please go next. Yeah.
Anvesha and Saisha, thank you for all the tips you've given, really insightful. I know you've mentioned and you've used the word strategy quite a lot, and maybe not on the day of exam, but exams are not, I would say, 20 days away. What's your strategy for the next 20 days as a student? What do you focus on the most? What do you keep for maybe the little last minute? What would be your strategy for the next 20 days?
I think just making sure that for the first exam that you're taking, you know where everything's at, you're familiar with the content, and it's okay to, be familiar with certain content more than the others. But I think just knowing where everything is, because the thing with the 24-hour exam is you don't need to like really memorize case, or you don't need to memorize your dates and your precedents, but you need to know where everything is. You need to know which lecture this is referring to. You need to know which folder everything's on, which Word doc. So I think administratively, you need to be in a stronger place than probably, just rote learning, which is not that important in this case. So yeah, I think just familiarizing yourself with the content, making sure your notes are condensed and knowing where they are, and just revising, going over past your papers to kind of decipher the pattern, and maybe practicing the essays and problem questions based on what you prefer answering eventually.
Cool. Thank you so much for that, Saisha. That answers your question. Lastly, in the interest of time, Priyam, could you please give a shortened question, given we are out of time? Thank you.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for all your tips. I'm sure I speak for every law student when I say that I feel much calmer after hearing you guys talk. A brief question would be, you've mentioned the importance of looking through previous years' answer sheets. I'm not quite sure all of us know where we can find that. So would you help us in pointing us to a direction of where we should look for them?
If you go like on your Moodle page, like every lecturer has a different format for how they've made their Moodle page, but usually in the examination section, like if there's an examination section and then you can see like past paper, key script or key answer script, it's usually there. So it'll be there on your Moodle page. If there's any place that you can find it, it's probably there.
Perfect, thank you.
So thank you so much, Anvesha and Saisha, for everything today. And a huge thank you to the coordinators and the entire WIF team for making our first event of 2022 to 23 possible. And to all of the people who have attended today's panel, thank you so much for coming. And we hope you feel more relieved about exams and exam preparation. In case you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to the speakers via LinkedIn. And as the careers team, we're looking forward to having more successful events in the future. In case you have any questions at all, please feel free to contact either Krish and I or anybody else in the team.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.